So, Spanish explorers in Louisiana. Spanish explorers were among the first Europeans to visit Louisiana specifically. Now, the Portuguese were one of the first to experience the New World, but we're talking about Spanish explorers were among the first Europeans to visit Louisiana specifically. They were ones who came in search of riches. They actually believed that, the city of gold was over here. So they were in search of gold and silver and then hopefully new trade routes. Again, we talked about, wanting them to find a new route to Asia because that's where all those resources, those wealthy, rich resources were coming from. So that's what they were looking for. One famous Spanish explorer was Hernando de Soto, which we're going to talk about. Hernando de Soto's expedition. So de Soto led an expedition to find gold and silver in Louisiana. Again, they believed the city of gold was here, so that's what they became looking for. He explored the Mississippi River and its surrounding areas. He did not find any, though, so they sent him over here in the hopes that he would just come across these, mountains of gold, and of course he didn't, so the Spanish royalty was super unimpressed by his findings. And when he died, the remainder of his crew went to modern-day Mexico. We're going to talk about how he died and all of that in just a second. So, Hernando de Soto on the shore of the Mississippi. What do you see in this picture? When we look at this picture, what do you notice? So possible answers, you might see soldiers. There are definitely a lot of soldiers here. You see them with their swords. You see them in the backgrounds. You might see crosses. You'll notice that there are crosses. They're literally putting up a cross back here. Now, what might this be in response to? We talked about how there's a whole lot of religion things going on over in Europe, and the Catholic Church is not happy. So they are hoping to spread Catholicism around the world and wipe out all of those other Christian religion groups. They're worried about them. They don't want them to be here. So they send missionaries and priests and whatnot, and when they're going on explorations, they want Catholicism to be spread. You'll see a priest. Here's that lovely priest right here. He's got the Bible and everything. He's ready to pray. You'll see swords. Yes, lots of swords. Lots of lovely swords in this photo. You see the Spanish flag again, staking that claim, putting that territory. Spain's king and queen would be so happy to know that their flag is flying in a new place. They get to brag to all their other monarch friends. And you'll also notice the Native American girls on their knees begging right here. This lovely photo right here. Look at them. They're on their knees. They're begging. They're kind of smiling almost, looking up at De Soto. So what is, the feeling that we take away from this? Why is this painting made? Do you think this is an accurate depiction of what actually happened? Do you think this is actually what this looked like when he was actually on the shore of the Mississippi? Probably not. This painting is a primary source because it is a painting. So it's capturing a moment, whether it was right when that happened or later on, it is still the moment. So this is a primary source painting. And what you'll notice is, again, they're spreading their religion. They want to be seen spreading their religion in the name of God. They've got the priest here. They're flying their Spanish flag. They're proud. And again, we come back to these lovely ladies right here on their knees, looking up at De Soto, almost in reverence, in just awe, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, God-like person is here to save us from our savage ways. Thank you so, so much. And of course, they're not even worried about them. They're just oh yeah, they're here. They're fine. We're not worried about it at all. Onward, my men. So what is the takeaway from this? Do you think that this photo was, historically accurate? Definitely not. This is definitely not what they all looked like when they were on the actual shore of the Mississippi. This is to show Hernando de Soto in just a wonderful light. He's charging the way. He's doing it for his country, for his faith. And, he's He's helping these savages. They're just looking at him in such awe and such inspiring ways. And, you know, they're not even worried about them. They're not worried about the Native Americans, like, being upset with them. They're not worried about a fight or anything because they're like, again, we got the swords. We're good to go. So this painting is all about depicting this man and these people in such a flattering way. Like, oh my gosh, how amazing. What is interesting, though, is you have to sit there and think about, what do you think actually happened? Let's say these Native American girls are actually on the shores of the Mississippi when they see Hernando de Soto and his crew coming. Do you think they would bow down in such reverence? Do you think that they would just be like, thank you so much for coming and saving us? Of course not. So you have to remember who this painting is for. It's not for the Native Americans. It's for this man right here. Oop, don't do that. Sorry. All right. So, Hernando de Soto, you know, again, he wanted to find gold and silver and whatnot. He did not find that. He returned to Spain, you know, really just horrible. They were like, we're so disappointed in you. Hey, Noodle. Mommy's trying to work. Thank you. There's a little glimpse of my baby. So he returned to Spain, just... You just might hear some squeaking in the background, y'all. Sorry about that. She's not sorry, but I'm sorry. So he's embarrassed, and when he returns back, because he was like, no, I'm going to find it. I know the gold and silver is there. I know it. He returns again, and he dies there. And his crew is like, nah, we're not going back. There's no gold and silver here. We're going to just establish a new place in modern-day Mexico. So that's Hernando de Soto and the Spanish explorers. And now we go to the French explorers in Louisiana. Now, the French explorers also played a significant role in the settlement of Louisiana, possibly even more so than the Spanish. They were interested in establishing trade networks from Canada to Asia and claiming territory for France. So remember those Acadians, they've already discovered land up in Canada. And they have a lot of furs up there. They're very wealthy from those furs being sold back in Europe. So they want to connect Canada to Asia and do that trade route, and also claim more territory for France. So one famous French explorer was René Robert Cavelier Sieur de La Salle. I probably butchered that so badly, and I'm sorry for my French-speaking students. La Salle's expedition explored the Mississippi River and claimed the territory for France. So La Salle stumbled upon the Mississippi River just like De Soto did. He's looking for a trade route, though, not for gold and silver. And when he got there, he named the region Louisiana after King Louis of France. So Louisiana is named after King Louis. Shocker. His triumph was rewarded with 300 ships for him to return to the new French territory. So they found the Mississippi. They're really happy. They've set up camp there. He goes back to France. The French king is like so happy with him. He's like, here's 300 more ships for you to return and continue to set up new French territory there. Unfortunately, on his return journey, La Salle could not find the Mississippi again and ended up in modern-day Texas. So he found it once, he stumbled upon it, and then when he came back from France, he was like, I can't find it. I don't know where this is. They ended up in modern-day Texas. So he set up a temporary fort called Fort St. Louis and attempted to march and find the Mississippi. So they're in Texas. They've set up Fort St. Louis. He thinks the river is close. He's like, I know it. It's so close. We just got to walk and find it. So him and his crew are walking for a long time, trying to find the Mississippi. He never found it, and his crew murdered him. They mutinied against him. They were like, we're so done with you, dude. You are delusional. This river is nowhere close. We're dying. We're tired. We're hungry. We don't want to do this anymore. So they killed him. The Spanish who had settled in Mexico, so remember, De Soto's people, gave up on him and they went and settled in Mexico, they're concerned because now they were like, the French are so close. Stop it. The French are so close to our territory and we don't like that. So they send people up to Fort St. Louis to just kind of send a message and maybe send the French back. But when they get there to investigate, all they found was orphaned French children. So all of the French people that mutinied against, LaSalle left or died or went somewhere else, and they just left their children behind. And guess who took care of their children? The Native Americans. They took pity on these poor children that were just left abandoned at this fort, and they took them in. So that's what the Spanish found when they went up there. So they're like, oh, no threat here, moving on. So again, did you know that LaSalle named Louisiana after King Louis? What? So Louisiana is after King Louis. All right, so here we have another painting. Again, primary source, painting, art, always a primary source. This is called Taking Possession of Louisiana and the River Mississippi in the Name of the French King. So what do you see in this picture? Possible answers. You might see a French pole. Just a random pole, just like in the middle here. Looking real nice. You see the cross, absolutely. Once again, we are seeing that cross, that spreading of the Catholic faith, trying to get rid of all those Protestants. You see the priest, yep, priest right here, got him, check. Swords, again, we got lots of swords going on, the people in blue. How calm everyone is. Do you notice the difference between, DeSoto's, which only showed 2 Native American girls, and LaSalle's? There's a bunch of Native Americans. You see them all over the place. They're in the background. They're over here. They're here. Look how calm they are. Like, they're just super cool with this dude in blue coming and setting up a pole and naming and being like, this is our territory now. Yay. Cool with that. So again, we've got these Native Americans who are just super chill, just looking at this man name their homeland in the name of King Louis. Do you think that's how that actually happened? Do you think they were just super chill with this dude coming and being like, this is now our home, I'm naming this for a king that you've never met, super cool. And they're like, yeah, great, so nice to have you. No. So again, what is the takeaway from this painting? Let's think about this. Definitely wants to be showing, his patriarchy. He's really loyal to his king. He's got this French pole right here. He's reading from the paper, naming King Louis as the inspiration for Louisiana. We've got spreading of religion. Now, we've talked about what the French people did to Native Americans. Was that nice? Was it a good time for them? Probably not. So maybe this is their way of trying to rewrite history and showing that the Native Americans were cool with them. There's no bloodshed. There's no killing and mass murder. Like, they were super cool and very friendly and very tolerable of the French coming in and naming their territory their own. Right? Let's rewrite history. Let's show this in a positive light rather than the actual bloody mass murder that it was. Yeah. Okay. So, LaSalle's failed expeditions. So, again, LaSalle attempts to establish a colony in Louisiana. It doesn't go well. He is murdered. Sorry, LaSalle. And he was met with a lot of challenges. One of his expeditions ended in shipwreck. So, remember those 300 ships that he was given to come back to find the Mississippi, and it didn't go well. One of them caused a shipwreck. Another ended in conflict with Native American tribes. Gosh, I bet not that painting, right? No, not that one. They look super chill with the French being there. There's no conflict there at all. So despite these setbacks, though, the French settlement in Louisiana continued. Which is how we get to Iberville and Bienville. You guys should recognize those names. There are streets, very famous streets named after them. 12 years passed between the time of LaSalle's death and the next attempt to establish a settlement in Louisiana. Why do you think 12 years passed? Let's think about this. Do you think 300 ships is inexpensive? No. 300 ships is super expensive, and they sent 300 ships with La Salle to find the Mississippi River again, which he didn't. So the French king's probably like really mad about this and does not have the money to continue spending on ships to get over there. So 12 years passes between the time of La Salle's death and the next attempt to establish a settlement in Louisiana, because the French king was worried that his two most serious rivals, the kings of England and the kings of Spain, would establish permanent settlements near the Mississippi River before he did. So remember, we talked about that those monarchs want to brag to other monarchs. They want to show off all of their new toys and their new places and all of their flags that they've planted everywhere. So this is exactly what's happening. The French king is upset because he thinks the king of England and the king of Spain are going to get there before he does. And in fact, Spain had already begun to establish a fort and a settlement at Pensacola Bay in what is now northwestern Florida. So that really made French king super mad, and he gave support for the settlement of Louisiana to Pierre Le Moyne Sieur d'Iberville in 1698. So he's like, we got to get over there. We got to establish our own stuff. They're beating us. So Iberville, accompanied by his younger brother Bienville, commanded a fleet of 4 ships that left France in October 1698. They sailed westward along the coast, and Iberville established a temporary settlement on an island off the coast of Biloxi Bay in today's state of Mississippi. He named it Ship Island. Iberville then set off to find the Mississippi River. He luckily had more success than La Salle, who was murdered for his attempt at this, because he used the Native Americans, the people who have lived here forever, who have set up homes here and everything. Yeah, he was like, can you help me with directions? And they're like, sure, buddy, we got you. So they found the Mississippi. They reached the mouth of the Mississippi River, and the following day, Iberville named the location of their first camp Point Mardi Gras, because they reached it on the date of that Catholic holiday. So Point Mardi Gras, which, just like Mardi Gras, a little different from the Mardi Gras we have today, but Mardi Gras nonetheless. So how nice of him. Did he name it after the Native Americans that helped him find it? No. He named it after his faith. Now, Fort Maurepas, although the French were determined to control the mouth of the Mississippi River, Iberville decided that the nearby Gulf Coast was a better place to locate his first settlement. Why would they want to settle along the Mississippi River and the Gulf Coast? What is their reasoning there? Think about it. Why are the French wanting new territory? What is their goal here in the New World? To establish a trade route to Asia. What is the best way to do that? To control a major river system that runs through the whole continent and the Gulf that you can sail your ships out from all the way back to France or Asia. So they want control of that. They want to be able to control who comes in and out and what is coming in and out. So the French began building a fortification near the site of present-day Ocean Springs, Mississippi. They named the settlement Fort Maurepas. So again, Fort Maurepas is to help control who's going in and out of that river and that continent. They want to control the trade route. 70 soldiers and 12 cannons were placed there to defend the fort. Now, in May 1699, Iberville returned to France. He planned to bring back supplies and additional settlers. He particularly hoped to return with some French women because all of the members of the first expedition were men. Now, how do you establish a permanent colony if you don't have women? What happens to your men over time? Yes, they die. They grow old and they die. So if you do not have women, you cannot establish a permanent colony because you need women to have babies and those babies to grow up and have more babies and continue on. So women are incredibly important to establishing any sort of permanent colony ever. And yet, we've only had rights for the last 100 years. Yippee! So, Bienville and the English. In his brother's absence, because again, Iberville went home to France to get some women, ooh la la, and to hopefully convince them to come back and establish a, permanent colony at Fort Maurepas. So because of this, Bienville is in charge. He continued to explore the river and its surroundings. He encountered many Native Americans and began to learn their languages. Aw, how sweet of him. He also was surprised by an English ship sailing up the Mississippi River in August 1699. So he's exploring the river, you know, he's learning these Native Americans, and all of a sudden he sees an English ship sailing up the Mississippi River. And he's like, oh my gosh, what is this? So Bienville guessed that the English were there to find a site for a possible settlement. He knew this was a threat to French plans, so he acted boldly in response. So again, the English, just like the French, are wanting to establish permanent colonies. They want to set up on that Mississippi River. It's a major trade route. And he's like, this is a problem. The English cannot be here. If they set up a route above us at the Mississippi River, because they're at the mouth of the Mississippi River, that's going to be a huge issue. So Bienville told the English that France had already claimed the river and the surrounding regions. He ordered the English to leave the river. He also told them there was a large fleet of French ships and troops nearby who were ready to attack if the English did not follow his orders. Of course, Bienville was bluffing. There were no other French ships or troops nearby. They have like 70 men and only 12 cannons. There's like no one else there. But thankfully, the English totally believed him and they backed down and they left. Thank goodness, because otherwise that could have been a huge conflict that could have started a war between France and England, which does eventually happen later on, which we talk about later. But he at least avoided war at that time. His little bluffing skills really paid off. The event convinced Bienville that the French had to build a fort on the banks of the river to protect the French claim. When Iberville returned in January of 1700, he and Bienville settled on a location 54 miles above the mouth of the river and named it Fort Mississippi. So again, Bienville knew that you need to control the whole river, not just the mouth. In order to do that, that's why he convinced his older brother when he came back to set up another fort farther up the river, and they called it Fort Mississippi. This is the English thinking about Bienville's threat. Like, oh, better go, right? That can't be good. All right, so here we get to New Orleans. Look at this. The original plans of New Orleans. Can anyone read that? Probably not. So, the population of Louisiana grew very slowly. Again, you don't have women, population doesn't grow. If you only have a few women, it grows very, very slowly. And important developments took place. In 1718, Bienville, known as the Boy Commander, because he was only 20 years old. Y'all, he was 20 years old when he came over to the New World and had to go up against the English single-handedly. So yes, he was known as the Boy Commander. He fulfilled one of his dreams and established a city on the banks of the Mississippi River. Bienville was so smart. He's like, we have to control this whole river, not just the mouth, not just the Gulf, this whole thing. And he wanted to build a fort on the Mississippi River. Bienville believed that in time it would become a bustling city and a thriving port. Bienville named the city New Orleans in honor of the Duke of Orleans. So a lot of people give credit to Iberville. He was the oldest brother, and he was the one that did the traditional, exploration. He was the captain. He came over here. So a lot of people are like, yay, Iberville, he gets all the credit. But in actuality, Bienville is the reason that we have the city of New Orleans. He's the reason that we have this lovely city we call home. So despite Bienville's grand dreams, the first months and years of the city's existence were difficult. Super, super difficult. Why do we think that is, y'all? Does New Orleans sit below sea level or above sea level? Below. What happens a lot? It's called flooding. How do you plant and grow things if there's lots of flooding? How do you build houses if there's lots of flooding? It's difficult. Also, on top of that, in 1723, a great hurricane destroyed the city's crops and most of its buildings. So just like how we have hurricanes today that destroy, just like Hurricane Katrina, they had hurricanes back then. Now imagine going through a hurricane without the shelters that we have today. Can you imagine the amount of death going on there? That's a lot. Though its progress was slow, New Orleans eventually became the thriving, wealthy city Bienville hoped. He will never live to see it because he's dead now, but we did eventually grow up to be the city that he was hoping for. Yay! All right, so here we have the Native Americans. So we're talking about these European explorers coming through. Sorry about the noise, y'all. Little dance party going on. Yep. Okay, so we were talking about the European explorers and, the reasons behind why they're coming over here. We've talked about, their struggles, mutiny and murdering their people and not bringing women over, like all that. So what's going on with the Native Americans during this time? So expansion was a sign of progress for the French, but it also created further problems with Native Americans. Company officers ordered the Natchez off their land so they could turn the area into a tobacco plantation. So maybe not like the painting showed, where they're all just super chill with each other, because I have a pretty good feeling that when these officers ordered the Natchez off their land, they weren't just like, yeah, cool, bro, we'll leave. The Natchez refused, of course, because this is their homeland, which resulted in the Natchez Uprising of 1729. So they fought back. They fought back hard. Although the Natchez succeeded in their surprise attack on the colonists, their victory was brief. In the next 2 years, French soldiers pursued and defeated the remaining Natchez. So Natchez are one of the 7 tribal groups that no longer exist. They are wiped off completely. They are eradicated. They will never return. The fear created by the Natchez massacre of settlers led many people to abandon their land claims and return to the safety of New Orleans. New Orleans is a fort. It's safe. There's soldiers and cannons there. And when the Natchez started murdering people who were trying to get land outside of that, those settlers all came back to the fort for safety. The Choctaw had long been enemies of the Chickasaw, who were allies and trading partners with the English. The English and the French, who were longtime rivals, tried to control the relationship between the Choctaw and Chickasaw, each to their own advantage. So the French knew that if the Choctaw became allies with the Chickasaw, their loyalty could shift to the English. Also, the Chickasaw had taken in the few Natchez survivors who had escaped being killed or captured by the French. Bienville demanded the return of the Natchez to the French. When the Chickasaw refused, Bienville began a military campaign against them. The French paid the Choctaw to fight the Chickasaw. The English entered the conflict on the side of the Chickasaw by giving them weapons and supplies. So remember how we talked about that the English and the French and the Spanish all made Native American tribes pick sides and then just let them fight each other rather than fighting themselves? This is exactly what's happening right here. The Choctaw and the Chickasaw are fighting each other on behalf of the French and the English. What? The French conducted military campaigns against the Chickasaw for several years with very little success, and then in 1740, Bienville signed a peace treaty with the Chickasaw, but neither side had achieved a clear victory. Now, do we really believe there's a peace treaty going on? Probably not. Don't believe everything you read and hear. The Native Americans continued. The Native Americans who had been forced to be slaves, so again, when they brutally killed them, they sometimes left survivors, and they were used as slaves. They were used as the people that they wanted to grow the tobacco, to work in the fields, to do the manual labor. But they weren't really good at it. Because they've lived here their whole lives, they were really good at escaping their French masters. They knew routes and how to go away. They knew how to run away. And so they didn't prove to be the best workforce that the colonials had hoped. So the colony needed another supply of laborers. And this led to the purchase of the first groups of enslaved Africans in 1716. So because the Native Americans weren't good slaves, they were like, oh, we need to find another group to enslave. So between 1719 and 1721, several large shipments of African people were brought to the colony. Many of the people who were captured and then sold into slavery came from the west coast of Africa. Many of them had agricultural skills, including knowledge of how to grow rice. After the arrival of the Africans, rice became an important food source in the colony. Y'all, that's how we got jambalaya and gumbo. Because the Native Americans weren't good slaves, they had to bring African Americans. Ooh, come on. They had to bring African Americans in. And because African Americans were using rice back in Africa and knew how to grow rice, they brought it here, which is how we got some of our staple foods. Gumbo and jambalaya. Gosh, what a chain of events. So by 1724, enslaved Africans had become the colony's main source of labor. So they basically gave up on the Native Americans. They still had a couple, it's like some of them, but mostly it was Africans who were now the slaves who had to do all of the manual labor. So can this be considered part of the Columbian Exchange? We've talked about the Columbian Exchange. We've talked about the exchange of foods and diseases, but now we're talking about people. And yes, people are also part of the Columbian Exchange. They are now being taken from their home in the old world in Africa and brought to the new world in North America. They are part of the Columbian Exchange. And to be quite honest, they're one of the main parts of the Columbian Exchange. The amount of money that they received for the slaves of Africa is tremendous. I mean, it outweighed some of the other resources like sugar and tobacco. Isn't that crazy? People were a main source of income and are considered part of the Columbian Exchange. All right, y'all. I hope everything made sense. I hope that you guys are taking good notes. I hope you don't have any questions, because unfortunately I'm not there to ask. I'm always here by email if you need me, though. And then just keep rolling. You got this.